Listen up. We are back with another episode of the Construction Mentor Podcast. My name is Ike. I am your host. What are we here to do? We're here to promote the construction industry. We want everybody to know that this is the place to be. Whatever you want your life to look like, whatever that dream looks like in your future, it's all attainable in the construction industry. And if you're already in the industry, we want to give you the mentorship. We want to share the stories of other people's success so you know how to walk that same path, right? The best path or the best way to success or to your dream is to ask somebody on the way back, somebody that's done it before, somebody that's overcome, somebody that has had the experience and that can share it with you so you don't have to learn the lessons the hard way. My experience is all over the place. You know, I started in the trades, then I was a mechanical engineer designing ductwork and plumbing and HVAC systems and fire protection systems. And then I went over to the general contracting side where I've been there for 10, 12 years. So I have a course to help people down that path. Go check it out. It's in the link in any kind of bio or description that I have on any podcast episode or any of my content on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. But there's free videos there. It'll tell you what a construction project manager is, how much they can make, what a day in the life is like, and how to get started. But it's not about me today. And I want to get to my guest here. We have an awesome guest today, Kevin Dasse. Kevin's going to share with us, what his career is and all the bumps and bruises that he's got along the way. So, Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Kevin, tell everybody where you're hailing from and what it is exactly you do today.
So I'm hailing from Southwest Michigan, and I am a AA lathe operator and union steward and civil rights committee for our union.
And for lack of a better word, that would be the steel. You're a steel worker, right?
Yes.
And just so people understand, because I don't think that people understand unions and the way that they're structured, especially if you don't have any family that's involved in the union in any way, right? Like I grew up in my dad was the union pipe fitter. All my cousins are pipe fitters or elevator union or whatever. What's a steward?
So a steward is almost like your first line of defense from the company, right? If, the company has an issue with one of the guys on the floor, the employee can look at me and ask me to come over here. I need somebody to listen to this, because a lot of times it's a he said, she said. The employee thinks he did something right, but the company goes, hey, you're doing something wrong. And I'm a mediator, right? That's what I do. I mediate this situation to make sure that everybody's anger levels stay within check, right? And nobody gets themselves in trouble. And if the company does overstep their bounds, I can step in for that person, because a lot of guys I deal with don't like confrontation. So I can go, hey, step back, I got this. And I'll talk to the company, go, hey, we're getting overboard here. We're getting off track, and that's kind of why I stepped into the union steward's spot, because before I got into the union, I was bullied a lot by companies and made to feel like a little person, like I didn't mean nothing. And when you step into a union, every man on the floor, whether, you're a B grinder just coming in, you're the new guy, to a AA grinder like me, who's got 12 years, we're equal. We're men, right? We're supposed to help each other and stuff like that. And that's the thing I love about the union. But as a steward, it's that extra protection of, okay, you can't belittle the guys. These are men you're talking to, or women, because we do have women in the shop now. And if they get pulled into the office, then they're not alone. A lot of times when you get pulled into an office to speak, if you're in a non-union shop, it's you and 3 managers and you're outnumbered. Well, they have the right to go, hey, I want my union representation. So now it's me and that person with 3 other people. He's not alone. He's got help. and I study the union handbook and their handbook, so I know the rules. So if they try and skew the rules and try and bend stuff to make them look bad, I can go, hey, that's not, you're hitting gray area. We're not doing gray areas. So
Okay, Kevin, I think a lot of that perspective would be triggering for a lot of people that would be, anti-union or question the union. What I don't think a lot of people understand is that that's a two-way street
yes,
too, right? So the union has a standard to uphold, and you're not necessarily just blindly defending everybody. There's
exactly.
situations where it goes the other way, where it's like, hey, actually, you're wrong here.
Yeah, I get called out for being a company lover sometimes, as they say, because union steward, I have to have a reputation with my guys on the floor, and I have to have a reputation with the company themselves. So the man who I call boss, who he'll come to me and go, hey, I'm having issues, and we have to come together and solve those issues. So even when he has an issue with, let's say, my buddy that's 2 lays up, he may come to me first, go, hey, something's going on with him. I feel a pressure in the shop. Has something happened in his life? Because he's angry, he's messing up, and he'll allow me to go talk to them and kind of figure out, are you all right? And that's the relationship where the union and the company can come together. It's not always just the union steward going at the company. We
Right.
can come together and make sure that the shop floor is harmonious.
Mm.
So
Yeah, and there's definitely, when it comes to showing up on time and quality of work and all those things, so it's one of the things that the union is supposed to do. It's supposed to sell themselves as, right? They have a brand they're supposed to maintain, and the selling point for a union or to hire a union shop is that you're guaranteed to get a certain level of competence and quality and all those things from the labor
yes,
force that they provide, right? So it's kind of eyes and ears in both directions, and I think what you just described sounds almost like a guidance counselor to a lot
yeah,
of people, like if they weren't there. But it's more than that. Like, you're also working, like you do put
yeah,
on the tools, right? It's just that
yeah,
you're that kind of eye and ear. And even as far as like making sure people are getting covered in their paychecks for every hour that they work, making sure that the conditions on site are the way that they're supposed to be and they're supposed to be acceptable, and all those things, and making
right,
sure that on site people aren't, quote unquote, stealing your work. An electrician isn't, doing moving things or cleaning up certain things when a general labor should be doing it. Or that's
correct.
just one example, right? So there's a lot there, and I don't think that people, understand it. And I think that a lot of stewards can get a bad rap. If you
Oh,
have an opinion on that, I'd love to hear it. And
so
if you don't say what I mean, then we'll go there, and I'll let you rebut it. But go ahead.
uh, so I know I've watched a couple of your videos. How are you with cursing?
It's okay.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
so stewards are brown nosing ass lickers, basically, is what I hear from most places. Um, that they're just, a company man in disguise. But it really depends on where you come from before you step into the steward position. I came from a place of hurt and stuff like that, and I got tired of being that man that gets walked on. So I studied the rules. And as I got older, I was like, I need to be a protector of these men as they come in, because they're coming in, 18 years old, and they're looking at, guys who make a lot more money than them, have a lot more
Sure.
knowledge, and they get rolled over. And I was like, man, I need to watch these guys. So yeah, I mean, stewards can either get like I've seen videos where there's the the oil field ones where the steward, there's a movie, I can't remember the name of the movie, but he walks into an area where all the managers are, and they're wanting to roll forward on, yeah, we got this line, and the steward and them go, no, we're not going forward because it's unsafe, and starts listing off all these things. And he's mean to them about it, and he's arrogant because he's got to shut down the egos. Like, if you put your ego in it, then we've already lost. We need to
Sure.
come to a point. And so you either think we're brown nosers or we're just arrogant a-holes, which, we got to play both sides.
So I think there's good and bad in every position in life. There's good and bad doctors, there's good and bad teachers, there's good and bad everybody, right? And I
Yeah.
think what obviously, with the description that you described with a steward in the steel union or any union, you have a little bit of power, right? Like you can make people's life really easy, or you can make it really hard. And when you have that power, no, people don't like that, first of all. But second of all, I think that a lot of stewards can be viewed as wielding that power to do less. So let me tell you exactly what I mean. When me as a general contractor, when I get a good shop steward, a good
Yeah.
carpenter steward, or a good laborer steward, or a good electrical steward, usually the second or third person on the job site has to be a steward, or on a property, right? And anytime you're in a property, whether it's a renovation or a new development, the union will require that the second or third person has to be a shop steward. And they may not always be the most productive individual from like hands in the field perspective. And I've even had contractors give me change orders for extra manpower because they're like, well, yeah, it's a 2-person job, but this shop steward doesn't do anything.
Oh,
You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
and maybe you've never heard this because nobody's ever said it to you, but I just know that when you get a good shop steward, you always want to hang on to them, as much as you can, for all the things that you said. Like, number one, you want them to play a fair game in both directions, hold the company accountable. Yes, hold the people in the field accountable the same way, and be honest with them, and don't just blindly defend them, but also be, productive in the field. So if you have any reaction to that,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it.
That blows me away, actually. I guess it might just be from my work ethic, where, like, if I got new guys coming in, I want to be what they look up to, you know, like my quality, my work. If I'm slacking, then they can think they can really slack. I mean, there's times where, you can take a breath, step away from what you're doing and all that, but, there's a workflow and there's a quality, and we have timelines to hit. So if I'm slacking, then they can slack. I'm a
Sure.
representation of what we are supposed to be. And even though, one thing that I don't think some people know is, at least for my union, I don't get paid for my position. I
Right.
volunteer my time.
Right.
So everything that I do with the committees and stuff like that, I do because I want to do. And I want to protect these guys. So to hear that, stewards can be named, less productive, the that's a
It
little
hurts the brand.
irritating.
It's irritating. Well, and again, like, I grew up in a union house, right? Like,
Yeah.
I understand that. My dad still preaches it. My dad's been retired for 10 years, and, he flies up to Boston all the time for the union meetings, lives and dies union. That's just what he does.
Yeah.
So all of his friends are in. And I will tell you that, as a general contractor, and I work for one of the top 10 E&R general contractors out there, and I've done big non-union jobs and I've done big union jobs in my career. I'm a net pro union guy, meaning that I don't necessarily agree with everything, but I definitely agree with unions. Like I said, they're way more good than bad. And if I, gun to my head, you were like, hey, you can build this new tower coming out of the ground with union or non-union, I'm taking union all day. Like, not even a question in my mind. Don't even
Yeah.
have to think about it. You know what I mean? And it's because of the overall brand, because of the expectation. And yeah, there's good teachers, bad teachers, good doctors, bad doctors. You're going to come with good and bad people in every industry, no matter what they do. And unfortunately, the sore thumb sticks out. And
Yeah.
it only takes a few bad apples to ruin the bunch, or, whatever cliche you want to put in there for a few people ruining the brand or giving people a bad taste in their mouth. So I love what you said about the work ethic and kind of setting the standard. And let's talk about how we got there, right? Let's turn the clock back all the way to the beginning to little Kevin.
Oh
What was
boy.
life like? What was life like for little Kevin when he was in like junior high, high school? What kind of house did you grow up in? What were the people around you like?
So little Kevin, I come from a blue collar family. My dad, he turned tires for Goodyear for many years and he raced motocross. All right. So we have we have race gas in our blood.
Sure.
And with that sort of sport, it's not a cheap sport. So my dad, he passed that down to us. I got my first dirt bike when I was like 2, you know, but with that, that is a big responsibility for a kid to have a dirt bike, especially from, you know, I had a one income house. My dad was the income. So, he worked 6 days a week, 10 to 12 hours. And being a mechanic, he was pulling work on the side. And we got very lucky that we found a house with 10 acres and we bought it from a friend and it had a wood heating stove in it. That's how we heated our house, with wood. And my dad split wood growing up with his dad. Now, I don't know if anybody else has split wood to heat their home, but you're out in the woods year round. you know,
Cold
yeah,
in
you're out there
Michigan.
cold, sweat, or during the summer you're sweating, splitting, stacking. We could go through 13 quarter year, and then we stack wood off to the side for the next season. So that's where my biggest work ethic came from, was my dad with the cutting wood, because if we didn't cut wood, we didn't have heat, and if I didn't do my wood chore, I didn't have gas for my dirt bike. So I learned at a real early age, if I don't accomplish the things that need to be accomplished, then the fun things don't come. And it wasn't necessarily a punishment. It was a learning of how the world works and money and stuff like that. So, you know, it was different than the other kids in high school that I was with. They went home, they got to hang out, chill, and they'd be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I gotta go cut wood. I'm out in
Yeah.
the woods. But that led that also led me into that work ethic, into getting a job early. So I was just turning 15 when I got my first
It,
job.
it sounds like obviously one income house mechanic in Michigan at that time. It may not seem like you were privileged, right? It sounds like you may have even been, lower middle class, but you had a huge amount of privilege. And I preach this all the time. I don't care if you grew up rich, grew up poor. If you don't have a dad, specifically a dad, that does something to you to instill work ethic, whether it's just being
Amen.
motivated of being warm in the winter or, or having gas for your dirt bike or whatever it is,
That was a big thing right
that's,
there.
and that's the ultimate privilege. So I don't know if you have any advice for the people out there that, may hear this and that doesn't sound like their dad, or maybe they don't even have a dad in their home. Um, but I'd love to hear whatever advice you may have for people and what that may have looked like, or what that may have felt like when you were in school and you had other kids that probably had more. Like, did you feel embarrassed about it?
I did feel embarrassed at times, um, like visiting other kids' house. Like, they had the newest video game systems, they had, new cars and stuff like that. But the biggest thing that I did was surround myself with a very small core group of people who understood who I was. Like if you talk to a bunch of people at school, they probably have been like, yeah, he's a nerd. He reads a lot. He keeps to himself, you know. But if you talk to one or two other guys that were in my circle, they'd be like, dude, he rips on a dirt bike. He is wicked, you know. And that was the thing. Like I didn't want everybody to know my business. You know, there was a core group of people who helped me stay centered in school. And those are the people who truly knew who I was and knew the love that my family was. And my dad, one of the things with how he was a coach. So he coached football, he coached baseball. So even the kids that weren't in my friend group, the respect that they had for my dad came down to me. And I was bullied a lot in high school because I was a big kid, but you know, I was athletic because I raced. But um,
So you were
there
the
was
offensive line or the defensive
yes,
line?
yes.
Is that? Yeah.
um, and it came about where I really realized the impact that my dad made on kids with being a coach was I was getting bullied and the kid was in my face, just followed me down the hallways. And one of the most popular kids in our school, who was an amazing athlete, snagged him up by his chest and put him up against the lockers, was like, you know who that is. You know who his dad is. You don't do that to him. He's a Dasse. And I was just like, I just wide eyed. I was like, oh my gosh. And he's like, go ahead, Kevin, just go. He's like, I got this. And that's where the first time I realized what the values my dad brought to coaching these kids at a younger age, you know, can come about. You know, even I may not be in their friend circles and stuff like that, but because of the respect I had for my dad, they knew, hey, we don't mess with Kevin. He's a good kid. And
Listen,
it almost
I think I could see you're getting a little choked up here, so I'm just gonna step in for a second. It's very important. Like I've talked a lot about, the importance of being present as a dad and passing on work ethic and how important it even is to live in the same home. There's a lot of statistics that show that even divorced parents, just the dad not being around has a huge impact. But to take it a step further and to you're highlighting the importance of to actually be present and
yeah,
participate in your kids' lives and know their friends and know their friends' families and those types of things. That has a downstream effect or a ripple effect in a way that you don't even realize, and
yeah,
you don't even understand, right? Like my dad definitely had that with my friends. My friends all loved my dad growing up. um and I think, if you don't, first of all, the piece of advice that was there, I'm going to pull it out and just say it explicitly. Who you surround yourself with is very important, even at a very young age, right? So if you're young and you're listening to this, maybe you're in junior high, maybe you're in high school, maybe you're in college. You don't need to have a million friends. You don't need to be the most popular kid in school. You don't need 10 friends. You need one or two guys or girls just around
amen.
you that know who you are and want to be there for you. And the people that want to be there will, and the people that won't. Let them, right? Just let them. And I think that's the best thing that you can do for yourself. Um, you know, with being bullied and that type of stuff, would you change it? Like, would you change that you had to split wood, keep your house warm? Would you change the fact that you were bullied, considering who you've become today?
No, not at all. I think being bullied and splitting wood and stuff like that, especially the being bullied, I wouldn't change for anything. It taught me to really look at myself and find out who I am and who I want to be. Because you have a decision every time you're getting bullied, and that is, do I want to be a peacemaker or do I want to wage war? And I had a moment with my dad when I was very young where I have a younger brother and I picked on him and he picked on me, brother stuff, and we would fight. And my dad came home from work one day. I was like, "Hey, Kevin, punch me in the shoulder as hard as you can." And I hauled off and I hit him. And he went and took a shower. He come back and he was like, "Kevin, you ever lay your hands on your brother? I'll lay my hands on you." And his arm was welted up. He goes, "You got too much power." And that really sunk in. Like, if I can hit a grown man at, I'm 12, 13, and I can do damage, what could I do to another person my age? So the perspective of that really sunk in. Like, I know that's not what my dad was trying to portray. He was just going, don't mess with your brother because you'll hurt him. But I took that into my school life where I knew if I went off, I could cause damage. And I was, I didn't like being that person. So I was like, all right, I need to the people that surrounded me, my best friends and stuff, whenever I got into that situation, they would step in and they would mediate because they knew, we play fight and they knew what kind of power I had. And they just laugh and go, "You don't, just walk away from Kevin. Don't mess with him. He's just trying to do what he's doing. And every time they pick on me, it's a war in your mind. And if I just hit them once, just once, they'd leave me alone for good. But that's not who I want to be. I want to be peace. So I'd laugh and I'd let them say their jokes and I keep going. But that shaped who I am now and why I'm a steward also. I don't like bullying. So that's something that I really, even when I teach mental health with other people that have had issues with bullying, you know, you got to change the mindset and deep dive into the feelings of what it was like to be bullied and how we processed it to say, okay, did I come out of that bullying healthier? And if I didn't, let's process those emotions and figure out, all right, how can I change that experience that was bad into a good?
Yeah,
And
I think the way that I've processed this, especially when even people that I grew up with have been mean to me of late because they see the trajectory that my life is on, and they try to tear you down. Or even when I was younger, and I saw people that have gone through pain, they either turn around and try to inflict that pain on somebody else, even if it's just like depression or anxiety or something in their mind. They'll wallow in it, right? And they'll kind of
yeah,
just snowball in their own self pity. Or like you said, they'll take that pain and they'll make that into their purpose and they'll use it for good. And when people try to inflict pain on them, there's a verse in the Bible, and I bet you can quote it better than me, but it has to do with having a sword, but keeping it sheathed, right? Keeping it at your hip and not pulling it out. Just so you want to be able to do that, right? Like you want to be able to
yeah,
give the welt and you want to be able to do damage just in case you ever have to. But um, keep it sheathed, even when somebody's coming at you, and just recognize that they're probably coming at you from a place of pain
amen.
too, right?
Yes.
So tell me about, you started working at 15,
Yeah.
and what did you start doing at 15? And as you were doing that, was there ever a thought to go to college? Did you ever feel pushed? What was that like?
So, you know, when I was in high school, I graduated in '06. And in those times, it was very much, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. I didn't understand school. You know, I, I'd understand the steps on talking to counselors, sending out things to even process of how to talk to other schools about going to college. So I went to what I knew, and that was I'm a grunt. I know how to work. I know how to carry things. I can work with my hands. So there was a factory in town that my grandmother worked at, and she got me my first job there. And that was at 15. And so I was going to school, playing sports, and I had a part-time job, and that really changed my perspective on money. Uh, I That's when I started looking at my dad's paychecks a little differently. I was like, oh, okay, everything. Like, I don't know how many people do this, but like I look at something and I go, okay, that's 8 hours of work. That's what it takes to buy that 8 hours
I
of
do the
work.
same. I do the same exact thing, and it's kind of terrible. Like you'll be out to dinner, and it's like, oh man, I worked like 4 hours for this.
Yeah. But that's when that kind of mindset started kicking in. At 15 years old, I started looking at, gas prices differently. I quit asking my dad so much for money. But um, a lot of who I became as a now steward came from my first job. My boss was horrible, just a horrible man. He was, I don't like saying this, but he was evil. And he, I was really good at what I did in his shop. I trained people. I stayed over for holidays, and I ended up becoming part of the research and development team by the time I was 17. I was dealing with Harley Davidson on a multi-million dollar project. And one thing that a lot of people don't know about me is I have Tourette's. And I had a mental breakdown at that job dealing with Harley Davidson because of the pressure coming from up top. And my Tourette solidified in my brain from a mental breakdown. So the head jerks and all that really came when I was stressed. And at 17, I was overstressed trying to get this job done. But I got off topic there.
Well,
But
and meanwhile, you're in high school, you're playing sports,
yeah,
you're doing other things, and you're also shouldering basically the stress of an adult. One of the
yeah,
things that I think is interesting with you doing that, and I tell people all the time, I don't know where we got this idea, but we got this idea in America that like you should totally put off any kind of work experience and enjoy your life and all that stuff until you're like 24, 25 years old. I think that's the dumbest advice in the world.
dude, I had so many life experiences from work.
I had the same thing. I was working in a sheet metal shop at 14. I was roofing at 13. I mean, by the time I graduated college at 23, I was 10 years ahead of people when it came to life experience in the workplace.
I met my first FBI agent at 16. Our shop got raided for a bank robber.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Um, well, talk about that. Like, what kind of perspective did that, give you? Especially, I mean, I couldn't tell that you had Tourette's. Like when I think Tourette's, and this is me sounding dumb and uneducated, and I realize that,
No,
but
you're
I
fine.
think of you like cursing uncontrollably in public and stuff like that. So, like, talk talk about that and how that affect. Like, how'd you go forward as at 17 years old dealing with that and carrying that into adulthood?
I shut myself off from the world, sort of. When you're that different from everybody, um, you don't want people staring at you. And I had comes from the bullying aspect too. It's really easy to bully someone that's different. So, um, my buddies kind of knew I was different. And at the time, I didn't know what Tourette's was. I just knew I was different. And so did my parents and everything. Like, if my buddy would at me, I would have to respond. Like, it's just, I have to respond. And I would make noises and clear my throat where my head would shake side to side. Like, we we didn't know what Tourette's was back then. And I really didn't understand until I was in my 20s and I started researching, why am I like this? You know? So it was a big mental battle where I picked up chewing tobacco. I picked up smoking because nicotine helps with the nerves, calms. Yeah. And that started that addiction where it was nonstop chain smoking because I didn't want to be ticky in front of people and let them know that I'm different. Um, and I didn't get okay with my Tourette's until I was about 24. And then it became fun because I went the mindset from, okay, I'm different to, okay, I'm unique and we can have fun with this.
Like in a self-deprecating kind of way.
Yeah. I went from depression into, you know what? This ain't as bad as I thought it was. Let them stare. Maybe they'll laugh. Maybe they can get some joy out of this. So, um, we did make, I've been divorced, but I will have to give my ex-wife a lot of props where she helped make it fun. Like I had what we call the Michael Jackson he. Like
Hmm.
I'd just be walking through the store and I'd go hee, and she start to dance, and like we turn it into a game. And um uh my mom, she would kind of when I was shaking and I'm walking through the house, like your head's bobbing back and forth and I'm still walking straight, right? Because my body's gotten used to it. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried to shake your head side to side and still walk a straight line. It's tough.
Never done it.
But like she look at me and go, "Hey," I'm like, "You all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And I'm just shaking back and forth. And just sometimes that recognition of what's going on will pull me out
Yeah.
of it. But it's interesting now. I like to talk to people about Tourette's because it is such a new thing, and so many people think,
Hmm.
like you said, the cursing. That's what's on TV. People love, oh, f
Yeah, it's in
this,
all the
f that.
movies and
Yeah,
people
it's
make
in the
jokes
movies.
about it.
And
Yeah, right.
what's crazy is to have a verbal tick is rare. To have a obscene verbal tick is
Hmm.
even rarer. So let's say 10% of the population has Tourette's. You know, 3% of them have verbal tics, and then 1% of that 3%
Yeah.
has an obscene. Like, so the most rare part of this, I don't want to say disease,
Disorder.
uniqueness, you know,
And uniqueness. That's good.
um, is what everybody really sees, because it's what catches attention.
So there's a lot there, right? And we could talk about, you know, pain and numbing and using vices, which I think a lot of people in construction have a huge problem with.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
do want to get back to the career because I think we're at the point now in your story where, if I'm doing the math correctly, you're about 37 years old and you've been doing steel for 12 years, which means that that's right around 24, 25 years old, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
So, um, but right before we get back to the career, you were married once before, you're about to get married again, and congratulations on that.
Thank
That's
you.
coming up in
Thank
a
you.
couple weeks. Like, a lot of young dudes out there, especially right now with all this social media, and social media can be used for so many good things, but I see so much dumb content out there from young women talking about what men should be and the standard that they should be and what mold they need to fill, even though they themselves very clearly have never looked in the mirror. But like, what do you say to the young men out there who might feel like they're different or have a uniqueness, as you put it, and they're a little concerned about dating or finding somebody?
Um, Find out who you are. Find a mentor and other strong men. Um, you cannot stand alone. Like, no matter how strong you think you are, having a group of men that you can go to for mentorship, um, even if they're older, is what I gravitated towards. 'Cause they've been through things. You know, there's things that are coming up in my life that I don't know how to handle, but these guys have been through it. So I go to them. So I think the biggest thing is taking a deep dive on who you want to be as a man, how you're going to go forward with that process, and then take a look around you with who you are surrounded with, because we emulate the people who are around us. So if you have a bunch of lazy people who talk down about themselves and woe is me and woe is the world, it's going to rub off on you. But if you have men around you who are like, man, we're go-getters. We're, you know, yeah, life's rough, but you know what? I got a good house, or, I got a good dog. I got a truck that's still running. I got a paycheck coming in. That's the mentality you want around you. So that way, when you do, you do feel down, because we all get that way. You don't have somebody else dragging you further. You got somebody that go, hey man, you're a little off this week. What's up? And that's been the biggest difference for me, is who I surround myself with. And that's real men.
Yeah, you said something interesting. I think mentorship and brotherhood for sure. And this notion that, you put off your life and you put off getting any kind of real world experience to your mid-20s. I've said this before on a podcast, but the notion that you go to college to find yourself, and you go to college to experience other people and meet other people and find who you are, those people don't have any life experience either. You're surrounding yourself with a bunch of, it's like the blind leading the blind. Like, and then the other advantage to getting out there in the real world and putting yourself in a real world scenario around real men or real women or whoever, is that they've got some life experience, and you can kind of see through their eyes and leverage their experience. And if there was one thing that I would add, because I 1000% agree with everything that you said, but as you get this life experience, right, and you're finding out who you want to become, and you project that out there, whether that's going to church or whether that's, working out or whatever that may be, when people can see who you are and you're authentic, you're going to attract the right person. I don't care if you got Tourette's. I don't care if you got one leg, like like whatever it is, people are going to walk into your life. It's really hard to understand this as a young person, because your world is only what you were born around and the people in high school and stuff like that. But me doing this podcast is a perfect example. Like, we were connected through a friend, Chelsea, who I consider a friend and is getting to be a closer and closer friend. But I wouldn't have even known her or that she existed had I not served my purpose doing this podcast. And now my light is shining and people can see me, right? So I have tons of people coming in my life right now that make me a better person, right? And I have all kinds of coaches and mentors from every direction anytime I need them. So we're at that point now where I take it, like, let's fast forward a little bit through I assume you were doing grunt type labor all the way up until you were like, hey, steel union. Like, what did that look like? What was the epiphany? When did that opportunity come about, and how did you process that?
So the opportunity came about. I was working a job as a material handler, and I had a fiance, and I was making 11 something an hour, and it was coming towards raises at the end of the year, right? And I was like, hey, boss man, so I need to make $12 an hour and I'll stay. And come raise time, it was $11.95. And just before I got that, my dad had told me about a job opening at this roll company. I don't want to say what it is because I want to protect Chelsea. But it was a very family oriented place. You had to know people to get in. And I happened to, a friend of my dad's was there, so he got me the in. And I had done a interview with the head boss man there, and that was interesting. This is the first time I've dealt with, steel people. And the boss man looked at me and he's like, in the interview, he goes, I didn't even want to interview you. He's like, but you have somebody on this piece of paper that vouched for you. So let's see what you got. and I took what I call a common sense test. It's a couple math questions, some word problems where, like, there's a hen at the bottom of a barn. If the rooster lays an egg, where does it land? And you're like, what? And then it's trying to see if you can figure out what's going on. And I ended up passing those, and the boss man was like, all right, are you mechanically inclined? I was like, well, my dad, the mechanic, I've worked on a couple motors here and there. That's what I got. He's like, all right, we'll give you a shot. Well, when they gave me that 11.95 raise, I was up on a machine later that day, and that boss man called me. So I answered my phone while I was working. He goes, hey, you still looking for a job? I'm like, yeah. He goes, hire in, probation, you're looking at 16 an hour. I was like, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll come see you.
Hey.
Right. So that's a $6 bump just on probation. And I was like, okay, that can lead me further in life. I don't mind putting myself in a position of I'm the new guy again. Like, a lot of new things to learn. Now, I make a joke about my job. I deal with rubber and urethane, and we use a lot of geometry. I failed geometry in high school. My dad made me take it again through American schooling because he said, you didn't try hard enough. I failed it after paying $350 to take it. Right? Now I use it every day at work. I understand it now.
Yeah, it's
But,
huge in what you do now.
yeah. But, the job that I do, I had never really used a tape measure. I had never used what they call a pie tape, which is something that we measure cylinders with. There's a lot of tools that I never touched growing up that I never learned about until I got into the trades. Like, schooling always pushed the college section. Well, I learned a lot in the trades, and I learned money wise that I can make enough for a living without going to college, without the debt. And I lost my track of mind here.
Let me just tell you where I was going to take it as soon as you said that. $16 an hour. Everyone says, "Oh, I can't take a pay cut," or "You can't live off $16 an hour," and it's like, well, hold on. You're learning things that you can actually do. A lot of people tell me that, oh, I can't get I don't make a lot of money in the trades or whatever. Here's an indicator. If you don't use a tape measure at work and you're in the trades, there's a reason that you're not making a lot of money. You need to pick up some skills. Go learn how to use a tape measure, right? When it comes to trigonometry, if you're a carpenter, you're going to have to use that. If you're a pipe fitter, if you're an electrician, all those trades, they all use trigonometry because you got to learn how to, what measurements different things are when they make turns and bends and all those things, right? And it's really not that hard. Now, it's hard in school
easy.
because you don't care because it doesn't mean anything. But then when all of a sudden you're making money and you can go from 16 an hour to 20 an hour to 24 to 30, then all of a sudden, like, trigonometry is pretty easy.
Yeah. The biggest thing that helped me with that learning was I had it in front of me. Like, I run a lathe, so I have a roll spinning, right? And I'm watching my measurements come to life. So when I was in school and I'm looking at, these 2D versions, and they're going, you need to do this and this to make it look like this. Boom. But when I can have it in front of me and watch it come to life, that's when the math came together. Now I can do it at a drop of a hat, but that's where, trades, you may walk into thinking I'm not good enough for trades. I failed at math. I'm not good with my hands. Walk into the trades anyways. If you think you can do it, go for it, because there's a lot of people who will teach you. I walked into the trades never really using a micrometer. I didn't know what a micrometer was, but I tell you what, I can now. I can do a lot of things, but that's because there was men there who were like, you know what, you need this skill. We learn skills by doing it. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is not truly failing. We fail forward. You're not just going to get everything right away.
So talk to me about, an apprentice. Like as an apprentice, what were you doing? Well, let's start with the money. So you're the steward. So you know damn well what the apprentices are making each year. What should an apprentice expect to be doing, year after year in an apprenticeship, and what do they make?
So with our shop, we don't have apprentices. We go by grades. You got B, A, double A, and triple A. And it all comes together by your work quality is when you move up. So coming into our shop as a B worker, you're not expected to do everything that an A or double A guy can at that quality. We may still ask you to do it, but we know it's going to take you a little bit longer. You may come ask us a lot of questions, and we're going to be all right with that because that's you learning, right? You're not getting paid what we're getting paid. We get paid the money we get paid because we don't ask the questions anymore. We can go through the processes without asking for help. So your B person, we expect work ethic is what we're expecting. We expect you to punch in. We expect you to stay punched in. Those are the two biggest things. Like you think it's easy, but with the amount of turnover we have, it's because people don't punch in or stay punched in. They just want to leave. And what I do, we can teach you from start to finish everything you need to know in-house. So the biggest thing is just the punching in and the
And
willingness to
what are
learn.
you making between an A and a B? And
So we negotiate that every contract. So you're guaranteed a raise every year. So let's say, like when I first started, I said 16 at my probationary. When I got hired in, I was making 18. So it was a $2 raise. That was at a B grinder. At an A, it was another $1.50. And then every year you're getting raises. So now I'm a double A grinder. I make $26.94. So I went from over 12 years from $11 an hour at the job that I left to making $26.94.
mm-hmm.
It seems like a long time, but it went by so quick. And it allowed me to buy a house, within the first 3 years of
Well, and
that
can you
job.
talk about what's on top of, in addition to the paycheck? What's there?
Are we talking union dues?
Well,
The big,
you have supplemental benefits, right?
yeah. So as, you know, are we talking benefits from the union or from the company themselves? Because
Both.
the
If you're
benefits
getting
were a
both,
lot better.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if both people are interested in that, for sure.
So one of the things that also really brought me over to this union job, was the benefits from the company themselves. Healthcare was a lot better. Um, the, classes, they paid for my safety specs. They paid for my boots. And when you have also one of the biggest things I love, and I've taken advantage of this, I shattered my thumb and I had to be out of work. Now you got FMLA, and FMLA only lasts so long. But if you go past that, the company they can fire you. But this is where the union comes in, and the union goes, "Hey, we're going to take care of you. We're going to give you 2 months out of our money. We're going to support you." And I had to dip it. I had to go into that, and the union had to give a good little vote and go, "Hey, yeah, he's a brother. We want to make sure that he stays. We're going to give him the extra time he needs So I didn't lose my job. And I was like, wow, these guys are here to protect, you know, but there's the union due, which is also one of the biggest things that I hear people hate. I get it. You don't like paying union dues. It's, $60, $70 out of your paycheck a month. But that goes towards the training of your stewards, your president, your vice president, towards the Christmas parties and all that. And it goes also towards to like what I use, the support. If you needed an extra month, we can give you that extra month.
Right. Yeah. And listen, I think that, when it's all said and done, like all those benefits are on top of, what you make in the paycheck. So
Yeah.
your income isn't really $26 an hour, which would be $52,000 a year if you took 2 weeks vacation. It's much more than that. It's probably worth $20,000 to $60,000 depending on, how things are doing. And that includes retirement and all those things. So just when you compare that, and I just want to we do a really bad job in construction, like driving this point home. First of all, you have to compare that to an average salary, right? Like my salary as a construction project manager, those things, if I have them, they get taken out of my paycheck, right? And not added on to. The second thing is there's a cost of living and average incomes in every single market in the country. Typically, the wages are proportional to what life costs. Life in Southern Michigan is not the same as New York City. So yeah, New York City, 52,000 plus benefits still doesn't get you too far, right?
Yeah.
But it will in Michigan, first of all. And second of all, when you compare it to the median salary in certain parts of Michigan, that's under $50,000. So what does that mean? That means that like whether you went to college, whether you didn't go to college, whether you're 50 years old and you've been working for 30, 35 years, or whether you're 20 years old, out of everybody, you are making with no debt a lot more than the median income, number one, just in your paycheck. And then you're adding benefits on top of that.
Yeah.
So, and again, you have a skill that could keep you, employed for life. So we just do such a bad job at explaining that to people. And we gotta be better. Like how much money you make and how far that dollar goes are two different conversations.
Yeah.
People don't really understand that. So
invest in your 401k early.
And yes. And that's the other thing, right? So since you, number one, have that, like you mentioned you were able to buy a house, right? So that's an investment that's going to appreciate, meaning that it's going to be worth more and more money over time. Same thing. If you invest $10,000 at 20 years old, by the time if that goes up by 9 to 12% every year for 30 years, by the time you're in your 60s, 40 years, by the time you're in your 60s, that's worth over $1 million.
And then
right?
you got like one of the things I've noticed with the younger kids, they don't understand 401k and what the company does too. The company will match up to 3 to 6% depending on how generous they are. Free money. And once you're vested, that money stays. That's yours. So, you're putting in, a couple thousand a year, but so is your company.
Right.
If you put 20 and they match a percentage, you're getting a good chunk of change. And then when, I took a hardship loan during the divorce, I didn't have the money to do a lot of things and I had to pull from my 401k, unfortunately. But that's what the 401k is there sometimes to help you. It's it's a savings that's not really supposed to be a savings.
Right. I mean, I know people that have taken, and to take it out before you're 59, you got to pay a penalty and taxes and things like that. But I know people that have bought houses cash and they're just like, you know what, I don't want a mortgage and I'll, everyone's there's a million ways to finance things and skin cat.
But opens up a lot if you
it gives you options.
Invest. Yeah.
So, when it comes to the trades, there's a lot of stigmas out there about the industry and being able to balance work and life and having relationships and things like that. You've already alluded to that, you had a divorce. And I think that we need to do a better job addressing those stigmas, number one. But number two, sharing stories about how people, overcome things and what did they learn and how are they better, and why is Kevin's next marriage, which again comes up next month, why
Yeah.
it's going to be better. So talk to me about what life was like in that 12-year window where you were with your ex-wife and you were in this trade and where it went wrong.
So I will just come straight out and say that my divorce happened from communication. As a young married man, I did not communicate with my partner like I should have. And it went both ways. We were young, we were in love, but when there's a problem, you should be able to talk to your partner about it. Like, it's not always going to be peace. And that's kind of what we thought. Like, let's not bring it up because we don't want to argue. And we found that out at the end of our relationship. We were both holding so much in, causing resentment. Because if you hold something in and you're like, man, she ain't doing this, she ain't doing that, or he ain't doing this, ain't doing that, you think on it, and you start being resentful. Resent can turn to hate. And then there's no room for the love. And that is the biggest thing that I learned from my divorce is it's you and your partner versus the problem. Your partner is not the problem. Your partner may be, causing that issue, but it's up to you and your partner to go, hey, this is the issue. You're not the issue. We can change it. We can figure out how to do this. You're not the problem. That's the problem. Let's try and find a way to sort it out. And I couldn't do that with my ex-wife. And I ended up going to therapy. I thought therapy was for crazy people. It's not. It is for healthy people who want to understand what's going on with themselves. And I learned a lot about myself in therapy that I wish I would have learned a long time ago. Like love languages. Not everybody accepts love the same way. You know, my ex-wife, she brought up in one of our mediations where I'd worked 12 hours. I came home, I sat on the couch, driveway needed to be snow blowed. And she asked me to do it. I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. I got it. Half hour later, she's got her bibs on and going out and snow blowing. In my mind, I'm decompressing. In her mind, she asked, hey, it needs to be done. It needs to get done now. Otherwise it's going to build up. When she said, I'm going to go out and do it, I thought she was helping me. I was like, oh, thank you. And, that's where the miscommunication came in. She said, hey, it needs to be done now. I probably would have jumped up. But when she said she was going to do it, I thought, oh, you're being helpful. Something taking over something for me. I thought she was trying to take something off my plate. And there was a lot of moments like that in our relationship.
Miscommunication or just no communication.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's easy to, when you talk about the resentment and where things kind of come from, how we perceive things, we don't realize that a lot of the time our mind is lying to us and telling us things that don't exist and that aren't there. And especially again in a world where social media, we see a lot of things. We see a lot of life painted a certain way. We can look at our significant other, wife, husband, whatever, and we can see all the things that they're not.
Yeah.
Right. And instead of all the things that they are. My wife is one of the most loyal people, very competent. I love her for so many things. And she is one of the only people that cares about me not unconditionally. Like there's definitely some conditions, like I could definitely screw it up. Right. But
Yeah.
she always has my best interest in mind. And I know that, and I have to remind myself of that. And I also, when I have certain thoughts creep in my mind, I have to remind myself of that and that I love her for the things that she is, not the things that she isn't. just because I see other relationships and other people, and I have this perception, which may not even be true, that they treat each other a certain way and that their wives do these things for them, and yada yada, right? So we have to acknowledge that, and then conversely, like you said, the love languages, like how does she need to be communicated with?
Yes.
Right. It's
Yes.
and Love Languages is a book, 5 Love Languages. I bet you've read it. I've read it. It was totally good. I learned things about myself. But when they point out things, a lot of the time, again, our perception can be a lie sometimes. And if we're not communicating adequately, especially with how you perceive things, hey, go snow blow the driveway.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in the trades and you're tired and you feel like you're doing stuff all the time and you just like need a minute, you may take that as them pointing at and prodding the one thing you didn't do. Like, dude,
Yeah.
I've done 99 things. You're pointing out the one thing that I didn't do. Like, I need a fucking minute. Just like get off my back, right? And it's almost like an attack. And like it's really easy when you're in the trades or you're in construction or you're just a high performing individual that's just trying to serve your family. Like it's an attack, like you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
Right. And what does that sound like? That sounds like something that you're going to build up some resentment over.
Yeah. The another thing that I really learned from, don't get me wrong, I had many good years with my ex-wife. We had a lot of fun and everything. We just fell apart. But one of the things I did learn was, if you don't speak life into your partner, speak good things, then your partner's going to become who you don't want them to be. And when I talk about work ethic, I started not becoming that person who will jump on a job, figure it out, and do it. My wife spoke negative about me behind my back and to me when I was taking on projects. She was like, "Oh, is it, you started this project? Are you ever going to finish it like all the other ones?" You know, and after a while, it tore me down to where like I just couldn't. I just couldn't. I didn't have the mental capacity to be the man who got up and let's do this. It became a mountain. And with my new relationship, I have a blessing of a fiance, man. A blessing of a fiance. Like, I may have to look things up on YouTube, but she's like, "Oh, you're learning from YouTube. That's awesome." You know, like I've been around my uncle I'm gonna just tell a quick little story. He's a plumber. He did plumbing at my dad's house. I'm standing at the side. I know nothing about plumbing. My soon-to-be mother-in-law, her toilet was leaking and stuff like that. Now, I've never changed a toilet. I've never done plumbing. It's like, you know what? I'll figure it out. Let me tear her toilet out and all that. And I'm on YouTube looking at YouTube videos, and I got it done the whole day. Like I spent doing this, changed her garbage disposal. I've never done that before. I learned a lot of things that day. But if you would have asked me to do that 2 years ago, I would have been a complete mess because I had been beaten and torn down by my partner. And I'm not saying she did it intentionally, because she was working with traumas, which we all have our own traumas to deal with. And she was projecting onto me without realizing it. She had a lot of things to work through in therapy too. But that's something that you have to watch, how you speak to your partner, because you can take somebody who was a complete blessing to your life and turn them into something that you don't want in your life. So you need to breathe life into them and support them. And as men, we need to be that rock, that foundation for, what we want in our life for our wife as our partner. And one of the things that I kind of want to give to the young guys, don't just date, man. Date looking for a wife. If you're in it to be in a relationship, you're in it the wrong way. When I got into a relationship with my soon to be fiance, we were a couple weeks in and I looked at her and I said, is this somebody that I could have as a wife? And or is this just, somebody who's going to be here for a little bit? And I kind of, I ended up going back to the Lord after my divorce, and I sent her a message of me speaking at church. And I said, "Hey, this is who I am." And we were probably a couple weeks in. So this is who I am, and I'm not going to leave this. I said, "I'm a man of God, and I'm going to stay that way." And her response was, "I love that." And then she came back to church herself, and she dedicated herself back to the Lord. And she was dealing with addictions, and she's a year sober. And hey, it's wild. It's just wild. Like the bless.
When you hit that low point and then you had the divorce, and again, another problem that is way too prevalent in the construction industry and joked about and kind of almost like it's spoken into existence as an expectation,
Yeah.
which we got to change, right? And I
Yeah.
think what and along those same lines, it's not cool to complain about your wife or your kids. What you say out loud will change your thoughts, right? And it'll create that
Yes.
resentment, whether it should be there or shouldn't be there. um, did you have like any depression or anxiety or feelings like you failed?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was gonna say, how'd you deal with that? But it sounds like church was the answer.
So when I originally was told that she told me she wanted a divorce, man, it rocked my world. To me, I made a vow in front of God, and I was like, I'm gonna die on this hill. I'm gonna try and make this work. And I didn't know how to tell my family. I was embarrassed that I was going through this. I felt like a failed husband. And I was like, where did I go wrong? I was going down the rabbit hole, replaying so many different situations, and then grasping at straws with her, trying to make things work. She had moved away to Texas, so she was across the country from me, and we were trying to make things work, and it wasn't. And when I was spiraling at my most, like I said earlier in the podcast, surround yourself with good people, because when you're at your lowest, you need people that can stand strong. And man, my dad, Chelsea's husband, Zach, you know, my my other cousin, Adam, my cousin Adam, I called him at almost 10 o'clock at night when I first heard, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna come over." And he drove 30 minutes to my house and sat with me till 2 o'clock in the morning and just made sure that I was all right. Um, and I got into therapy, which was probably the most helpful thing to get me through the failed husband aspect. And I learned to journal. Put your feelings in a journal. It's it's weird to think grown man journaling, but when you write it down and then you go back and read it, something in your mind clicks. You're like, okay, that thought is a good thought, or that thought is a little skewed. You know, it's like when it's in your head, it's it could be just what you think is the truth. But when you write it down and you reread it, it's like, whoa, that's not me. You know, it can help you figure things out.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's like organizing your thoughts, and so I've done that. And I used to have night terrors. I'd wake up screaming in the middle of the night or get sleep paralysis, which I still have sometimes. But I had a lot of trauma when I was a kid, the way that I grew up and the way that my house was and my relationship with my mother. And when I articulated that, with words on a piece of paper or on a screen because I typed it, um, I stopped. I stopped having those night terrors and a lot of thoughts and anxiety and depression. And I think it was also not only to articulate the thought and kind of organize it, but acknowledge it and then
amen. Yeah.
like almost like literally take it out of my head and put it over here. And it's like I don't have to deal with that anymore. It was like a download. Like, like I'm getting this off my desktop. I'm going to put it on this hard drive, and this hard drive is going away. It's not on the computer anymore.
Yeah. Have you
So
have you ever gone back and read some of your old journals and kind of tried?
it's been a while. It's been a while. I'm probably going to do it again soon because I'm thinking about, getting back into writing and stuff like that. And it might end up be one of my long-term goals is to write a book of all the things that I've learned, if for nothing else, to leave behind for my kids. Um, so we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But it was, it was, I don't know if epiphany is the right word, but like just looking at it and kind of, because you can also kind of feel like some of the trauma that you went through, like you're being a baby about it, or it wasn't really
Yeah,
that bad, or it's almost like imposter syndrome. And it's like, no, wait a minute, that actually happened. And if I read what I just wrote down on this piece of paper about somebody else, I'd have XYZ thought about it.
yeah,
Like I would feel
yeah.
bad for them. I would understand the way that they feel. I'd understand, how that's affected their life. But when it's me, like you try to have imposter syndrome about it. And it's like, no, I'm the only thing that caused any kind of depression and failure and anything bad in my life.
It's a
And,
healing experience to
for sure.
go back months later and look at your thoughts and go, man, I was broken, but
Mm,
look at who I am now. Like
right.
once you've healed and go back, it's like, wow, I've come so far. And that's one of the reasons why I love the journaling is you can physically see your journey from, your lowest point or, it doesn't even have to be your lowest point, but you can journal your progress and then you can go back and go,
Sure.
wow, yeah,
Well, and
I
that's the other
did it.
thing too. It's like, look how far I came. You know what I mean? I think we get when you're on the good path and you're addicted, almost addicted to like personal development, or even if you haven't even intentionally gone through a path of personal development, it's like you've come a long way from like splitting wood at 14, 15 years old to now being a shop steward making, this money and all these things. So it's always good to practice gratitude, and especially for, where you are in life and where you could be going. So listen, we are way over time because this conversation is just too good.
I could
What I
definitely talk
want to
to you
do,
for hours.
yeah. What I would like to do is, I'd like to do two more things. Number one, hear about whatever kind of plans you have for yourself, like what's next for Kevin. And number two, I always like to give the floor to anybody. So any advice that you'd have for young people, especially young men looking to get into the blue collar world or the construction industry, whatever you want to call it, the floor is yours.
So what's next for Kevin is getting married and starting a new life. Um, I'm a be a stepdad, and that's I've always wanted to be a dad. So that's awesome. I get to instill what my grandfather and my dad taught me into this little man. He's 10 and he's an awesome little dude. And so my biggest new thing moving forward is learning to be a dad and teaching him what I've learned and help him not go through the hardships that I went through and being an amazing husband to my wife and continuing our journey with the Lord and just building a life that is amazing for us. And I don't know what it holds. And I don't even know if the trade that I'm in is going to be the trade that I stay in. But the happiness, the peace, I always, I live by if it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. And my soon to be wife says the same thing. So we look at things like, is this going to cost us our peace? Yes. Okay. We need to move forward. And so what's next for Kevin is building life, building life.
You may have just hit two birds with one stone there, because I think that's an amazing thing. And I think when you especially when you pick a career, your career, one of the worst pieces of advice out there, I think, is to find your passion and you'll never work a day in your life. And it's like, well, or it could enable other things. It could
Yes.
be the fuel to your purpose, which could be building, a certain life with your family or serving God or whatever that purpose may be, right? Like I always say, plumbers don't like the way the pipes smell, but but it can enable them to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, I really appreciate you coming on here, man. I really appreciate the vulnerability. I think that this is definitely one of the most impactful episodes I've ever done. And I think a lot of people, need to hear this. So I'm very excited to share it.
Hey, it's good to actually talk to you and not just edit you.
Yeah. I keep forgetting that, he's on Chelsea Hayes' podcast, Hanging with Hayes. He does all the editing and clipping for that. And I think he's been on that twice. So everyone should
Yeah.
go check that out. If you want to hear a perspective, a lot of guys out there, I had her on my podcast. She's a blue collar wife. And I think a lot of men out there need to hear that there are women that see the world the way that she does.
Amen.
and there's a lot of comfort and peace that can come from her message, which is why
Hey,
she's got such a big following.
if you don't mind, I'd just like to say to
Sure.
the men that are thinking about coming to the trades, do it. Just take the leap. Don't be afraid to fail, because we fail forward in life. If you do fail, don't dwell on that failure. Look at it, pick it apart and go, what did I learn from it? So that way you can move forward. We fail forward in life. We don't fail backwards. We keep moving forward. So it's a scary thing, the trades, because you see hard, gruff looking men sometimes, and we can look scary, but I promise you, you come in with the right attitude and the willingness to learn and punch in every day, we're going to teach you a lot, and you're going to move forward.
Not just about the trade, but life. So
Amen.
we'll close on that, man. Kevin, again, thank you for coming on. This is the Construction Mentor Podcast. You can find it on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can always catch me at the Construction Mentor on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Kevin, I appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody listening. We'll catch you next time.